What's up, everyone? Robbie Gould here, and I am kicking it with DePaul University and Hawaii Golf Hall of Famer. Not only is he a Hall of Famer, but he is a recipient of the prestigious PGA Distinguished Service Award. He has long been the visionary for golf in Hawaii and now bringing that vision to the city of Chicago. He's a stage 4 cancer survivor. You are most known, though, for your on-course reporting and analyst job for the NBC and Golf Channel. And I've fallen asleep to this guy's voice many a times on weekends, not because he's boring, but because everyone loves to watch golf during the weekend. Mark Rolfing, thanks for kicking it with me.
Hey, Robbie Gould, great to be with you. And I just wanted to say thanks to you. You mentioned that I was a stage 4 salivary gland cancer survivor. The first person that came to see me when I got out of that hospital at the University of Chicago was you. And if I'm not mistaken, it was a game day. And that was a game changer for me. So thanks, Robbie.
Well, you're a dear friend, and obviously you're very strong in what you went through. We'll get into a little bit later, but I'm more jealous about your background. You're sitting out on the lanai in Hawaii. I mean, I'm down here in my basement in Chicago. It doesn't get much better than that, does it, huh?
No, it really doesn't. Even during the quarantine, it's been a pretty good spot. This is the 17th hole on the Bay course right behind me here. And the great thing is I will never, ever mow a lawn again in my entire life. I get it mowed for me every day. Debbie and I have lived here for 35 years. No matter where I'm working, this is home. So I doubt you'll see us leaving here.
That's a great place to be during quarantine. But I want to take you down memory lane for a minute. You go to DePaul University to play golf. You're roommates with Vice President Quayle. You have this unbelievable college career. And here's this guy who's your teammate and roommate. Tell me what he's done for your career and tell me what he's been able to do to help you with some of these projects you have that we'll get into a little bit about his relationship and how he's shaped you as a mentor.
Well, Dan was a couple of years older than me. And, it's interesting. When I got to college, I was a pretty good golfer in high school, but not great. And it was during my sophomore year of my college career, which was his senior year, that I started kind of blossoming. And interesting, I won the first big tournament of my entire life, a college tournament. And the whole thing changed for me mentally. It all of a sudden taught me that, I could play and I could compete on a collegiate level. And it's interesting, I actually won the next tournament that I played. So I won a tournament and then won the next one. And there were a lot of times my first couple of years in college where I was down on myself. I didn't have a lot of hope. I certainly wouldn't have survived the cancer I did back then because I didn't have the hope that I had when I fought the cancer. And I got to say, Dan Quayle really kept me on the path that I needed to be on from a golf standpoint. He knew I was way better than him. Everybody thought he was the big star of the team, but he knew I was way better than him. And a lot of guys would have just kind of brushed me off and made life difficult for me. But he was like a big brother to me.
So you get out of DePaul University and you guys kind of go separate ways. You take on a little bit of a golf career. He starts his political science career. You play golf professionally. It didn't quite go maybe the way that you thought that it might. Did you have aspirations to do something other than a playing career in golf, or was playing golf kind of like what your mentality was coming out of college?
No, I think probably headed in the same direction Quayle was. Maybe be a lawyer, a politician. I'm not sure. The golf thing sort of got me off track. And frankly, when I got out of college, I was not nearly as good as I thought I was. The problem was I didn't really have the fundamental base that I needed to become a great player. I had an unbelievable short game, Robbie. I could chip and putt with absolute best of them. I was not a great driver of the ball. So fundamentally, there was a deficiency. And I think I kind of got lulled into the thought that, yeah, I could be really, really good at the game without having the fundamentals. And I didn't have them, but I still wanted to give it a try. I gave it a try for a couple of years. And it didn't work out. But what did work out was I met Debbie Rolfing, and we came back to Hawaii, where I played in the Hawaiian Open, and that's what really changed things.
So you meet this unbelievable wife of yours and you move to Hawaii. You guys have been there for almost 40 years. You've fallen in love with the island. How did you make it to and stay in Hawaii?
Well, the whole broadcasting thing hadn't happened to me when we came here. If you were a broadcaster on network golf television, you would never live in Hawaii. You wouldn't in a million years. But I'm never going to leave in a million years now.
I wouldn't leave if I were you either.
Yeah. Well, I've been commuting for 33 of them. I've kind of gotten used to it. The broadcasting was such a fluke. We had gotten established here and timing was really good. And I'd worked my way up through the ranks at Kapalua, and Debbie had become a highly successful real estate broker, and life was really good. And all of a sudden I had this fluke thing happen playing in the Lincoln Mercury Kapalua International Golf Tournament, where I won a car on NBC, and Lee Trevino was the analyst. They brought me up to the booth to talk about it. He couldn't understand it. The first thing he said was, "Not that good. How could you have won this car? Was the thing fixed, or what's going on here?"
In true Lee Trevino style, right?
Yeah, no, he was giving me the hard time. He used to call me Palu, which is like trash fish in Hawaii. Like he thought I was that bad a golfer. He was always my partner when he came over, and we could never beat anybody. Anyway, he just said, "You're not that good." And we got into this little back and forth, which back then, if you were being viewed in a television booth, all you did was tell him what clubs you hit and where the wind was blowing from. And the producer kind of liked it and invited me back. And so I ended up coming up here with Lee and Vin Scully, believe it or not. And I spent 3 days in a row up in that booth. And the next thing you know, Don Ohlmeyer, who was the producer of the show at the time, said, "How about a tryout next week on ESPN as an on-course commentator?" And Debbie and I looked at each other and said, "Why not? What do we got to lose here?" And gave it a try. And 33 years later, I'm still doing it.
I love it. Something that I've always admired about you was this kind of free-spirited and just go with the flow. And I think that's something, as you've become my mentor, that I've always taken, right? And no matter how high, no matter how low, I've always looked at it from this, it's whatever's supposed to happen is going to happen for a reason. And here you are 33 years later. You started as the cart washer, worked your way up through the pro shop, became the marketing head and other executives at Kapalua, which is my favorite golf resort potentially of all times. And you start your own sports marketing agency and consulting business. And you're doing all of this from Hawaii in 33 years. How did these relationships come to be? And how did you manage all of that starting from the bottom to get the whole way through?
It all stems from golf, Robbie. That's why golf is the greatest game in the world. It's like the glue that brings everybody together. The whole Rolfing sports thing, it started with golf, but the real big break for us was college basketball. We started a little college basketball tournament at a gym that seats 2,100 people in Lahaina. And 3 years after it started, we've got North Carolina and Duke and all the best teams in the country coming out here. And why? Because the coaches all loved playing golf, and the alumni that traveled with them all loved playing golf, and everybody wanted to come to Maui and play golf. So I had a built-in advantage from the standpoint. But when I look back on kind of the moments that really changed things for me, there was a day in 1978 that I was working in the golf shop at Kapalua. And Arnold Palmer was designing the second course at Kapalua. He had designed the Bay course, and he was out here for a 5-day visit. And he walked in the shop and he said, "I need a partner this afternoon. Who's the best player in here?" And I said, "Me, by far, me." And he
even
said,
if
"Okay,
you weren't the best, you were going to say yes just to play with Arnie
no matter
anyways.
what. And he said, "All right, you're my partner today." And I shot 67, I think, that day. Maybe I played great. And I was his partner every single day he played there for the next 10 years. Came out here a lot, and I was always his partner. And my dad had died when I was real young. It was interesting. He was killed in a tragic plane crash at Meigs Field, which is no longer an airfield there, just close to your old home at Soldier Field. And So I grew up with my mom being dad and my mom. And in a way, Arnold Palmer sort of became the father figure that I hadn't had. He almost became like a dad to me in a lot of ways. And he helped guide me getting into the whole broadcasting thing. And more importantly, he really taught me how to be the kind of person that hopefully I've ended up being. And it was the kind of guy that he was. And you know, that took the time, and that everybody was just as important as the next person. And Arnold Palmer just had an unbelievable impact on my career.
I want to transition a little bit. I want to talk about your broadcasting career. When you started in broadcasting, you started out at ESPN. You were one of the lone guys that was going to become an on-course reporter. Did any of this, because it was brand new to you, have any extra pressure on you having to be super special, because you're now one of the pioneers of what golf has transcended into?
Well, I think there was a lot of pressure. And I didn't understand at the time, Robbie, why people were going to respect or pay attention to what I had to say. Because if you hadn't won a major championship, you were not a golf analyst on network television. There was really only two broadcasters that were on-course commentators. Both had won majors, Bob Rosberg and Bob Golby. Rossi worked for ABC, Golby for NBC. But those were the only two at the time. And of course, the analysts in the booth were Trevino and Ken Venturi at CBS, and Arnold Palmer and Nicholas did a little, but there was no Gary McCord then. There was no David Faraday then. So the common man announcer, the sort of regular guy that didn't have a great playing career, really had never broken into the game, and I couldn't understand why people were going to pay attention to me. And it took a while for me to get comfortable doing that. And, you know, it's interesting when I look back at it, and I tried doing a couple of things, it just didn't work. I tried being funny for a while. You know, I'm not a real funny guy. I kind of funny sometimes, but, you know, I'm certainly not Faraday. And I know that I had to be true to myself. And when I just went back to the common communication skills that I had learned through my life, that was good enough. It took people a while to accept it, but once they did, it really didn't matter what I had won, whether it was Maui Open or the US Open.
Well, I think a lot of that comes down to your mentorship from Arnold Palmer and what you took away from him. Obviously, relationships for you are very big. And your relationship with the players, you see that when they come out to the Tournament of Champions and you guys do your taping for what would be the Hawaii Tourism, your road to the Ryder Cup. You've had some of the most incredible interviews people have ever seen. Tell me why relationships matter to you, because you never misuse those. You never take advantage of those. You always put them in a position where people around you can understand more about the game of golf than anybody else I've ever listened to in an interview.
Oh, well, thank you very much. That's a high compliment coming from you. You know, the most important part of my job, interestingly enough, everybody thinks it's talking. They always say, how did you learn how to talk and communicate like that? It's not at all talking, it's listening. And when I became proficient at my job, and particularly as an interviewer, was the time when I really started to realize I had to listen. And I would do interviews with lists of notes, you know, 10 questions in a row that I'm going to ask a guy. And it didn't matter how he responded to a question. I would ask him the next question, even though he might have said the earth is flat. I would have said, well, how about the birdie you made on the second hole 2 weeks ago? As opposed to, what? The earth is flat? Once I learned how to listen, I became not only a better interviewer, but I gained the confidence of the players and the subjects that were being interviewed, because they knew I was listening and I was able to follow up. I was talking about things that they had already talked about and obviously wanted to talk about. And I could get a feel for how far I could go with somebody and how far I couldn't. It took listening and learning how to listen to be able to do that.
I know that you're a guy who doesn't stand in one place for very long. You have a lot of projects going on, and a big project I want to talk about is in my city, a dear city to me in Chicago. And you have a huge golf project that you're undertaking with the Chicago Park Alliance. And you started this as the founder and president, right? And you are going to take South Shore and Jackson Park golf courses and turn it into a grassroots initiative that's going to help promote public golf and expand youth programs. Why Chicago? Why South Shore? Why Jackson Park? Why Chicago? That's what I want. Why Chicago? Why that area? What's the initiative?
Why Chicago? Chicago is simply the greatest golf town in America, Robbie. It's no contest. There is no metropolitan area like it. And everybody always looks at the golf courses and they say, wow, Chicago's got more great golf courses than any other area. They do. There's no question about it. But that's not why. It's because of the fabric of the community of golf in Chicago. The Western Golf Association has had a lot to do with it over the years, and the Chicago District Golf Association. It's just got a real solid base, and the people in Chicago love their golf. And it doesn't matter whether it's private club golf or public golf. If you come up with the right idea, people are going to support it. And as we know, the South Side of Chicago, when it comes to golf in particular, has simply not grown like the North Side. You know, most of the big clubs and great courses have been on the North Side of Chicago. And when I was recovering from my cancer at the University of Chicago Hospital, I was looking out at Jackson Park Golf in the middle of August, and it was empty, and I couldn't figure out where all the kids were. They were out of school, and nobody was playing golf, and it just looked to me like an opportunity. And so I started snooping around there and at South Shore, and kind of fell in love with the place. I love the site. I love South Shore Golf Course, and there's some phenomenal lakefront potential there. But more importantly, it was the people. And there was a group of guys, the regulars at Jackson Park and South Shore, that kind of took me under their wing. It's interesting, at South Shore, there's a big oak tree. It's sort of like the tree at Augusta, where at Augusta, there's a tree where everything in the world of golf happens underneath that tree Masters Week. Well, everything at South Shore and Jackson Park happens year-round basis under the tree at South Shore. And once I got invited to come under the tree and sort of be part of the group of guys that play regularly there, I started understanding what they wanted. And I started realizing it had been 100 years since these golf courses had been improved. Irrigation systems are shot. And it wasn't so much, oh, we're going to have a big tournament here and put it on TV. Yes, we're going to do that. And that's going to be one of the benefits. More importantly, these folks deserve to have a quality product. And there was just no way financially for the city of Chicago to come up with a plan to be able to do it. These are Park District golf courses that own them and operate them. And so we were able to get some people together, Mike Kaiser in particular, and came up with the idea of trying to fund this thing like a park, like Haley Park. And that is, you're not investing money that you're going to get a return, but you're donating money to better the community. And so we're going to use $30 million of private funds. The beauty of that is, in building the park, which is going to be a golf course, you don't have to pass the cost along to the consumer. You're going to be able to keep the cost down, but at the same time create a facility that's going to be worthy of having a big championship there, and showcase the South Side of Chicago like it's never been showcased before. There's a lot of the Atlanta model in it. When you think about Eastlake and that particular neighborhood and the challenges and issues that Eastlake had, and how Tom Cousins and the Eastlake Foundation came in and changed that community forever. It's now got the highest graduation rate of any high school in Atlanta, the charter school in Eastlake. I think that can happen at South Shore and Jackson Park. And certainly wouldn't have happened without President Obama and Tiger Woods, but we got lucky there, and there's a couple of guys that really are totally invested in it, and I think it's going to happen. It's taken longer than we wanted, but I think it'll happen because it's the right thing.
I know this is a historical recreational asset that's been there for over 100 plus years. I want to go back to President Obama and Tiger Woods. I know you've spent a lot of time getting a group together, but tell me how you were able to get President Obama to call Tiger Woods to come on to be the designer. How did you get these two to get paired? I mean, you got the GOAT of golf and the President of the United States. How do you get them to come together?
Well, I think this will be the first time that I actually tell this story, but I didn't actually get Obama to call Tiger. In fact, I had never dreamed that he would. We had almost already hired Ben Crenshaw, who's the only golf course architect I've ever worked with, he and Bill Core. They'd been on the property a couple of times. They were looking at it. And the next thing I know, President Obama calls Tiger Woods and evidently said something like, "Hey, do you know this guy, Mark Rolfing?" Tiger goes, "Well, yeah, I know Mark Rolfing." Why? He goes, "Well, he's taking a look around my golf course up in Chicago and, maybe going to do some renovation. And I think you should be the architect." So Obama basically made the deal without me. And, I
That's
was pretty
helpful.
sure, that Tiger was going to back out, particularly after Obama told him that he wasn't going to pay him to do it. Uh, and so the first time Tiger came up and we went around Jackson Park, I'll never forget. We were in a cart together and there were all these other carts behind us and we're riding around and Tiger said, "Hey, stop the cart a minute." So I stopped the cart and he looks at me, he goes, now let me get this straight. I'm up here today applying for a job with you. Is that correct? And I said, "Well, I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah, I guess kind of." And he goes, "All right, I just to make sure I understood that. And the thing is, you don't want to pay me for this job, right?" And I said, "Well, we're all kind of chipping in and trying to do this on a volunteer basis." And I thought, man, this is going to be the last time I ever see him. He said, "Okay, just wanted to get that straight. Let's go. Take a look." And there were 3 or 4 times early on in the process that I thought he's going to say, "Wait a minute, what am I doing here?" But Tiger Woods loves Chicago as much as I do. He's got a great history with Chicago, and he was totally fascinated with the whole idea. He loves the lakefront and the site. It's a wonderful site, and you do a lot as a golf course architect. But more importantly, he asked me that first day, "Where are all the kids? Where are all the kids?" He said it a little more emphatically, if you can imagine Tiger. And he said, "We got to get the kids out here, and we can change. We can change this." And I'm totally committed to it. And I remember just having him and Obama together at the President's Cup in New York a couple of years ago and talking to them together. And I had to pinch myself after it was over and go, "Wow, these are my 2 partners in the deal, Barack Obama and Tiger Woods. This is pretty amazing. We can't make this happen, then I ought to get fired."
Well, I love the fact that this project is much bigger than just golf and just jobs and just bringing together a community. To me is incredible. And I know that these projects that you get involved in and bringing these people together, it's obviously to make a huge impact on other people. And obviously, you know that I'm always here to help you in that endeavor. And, anything you need from me, whether it's making a donation or getting involved to come down there and help be a mentor for some of these kids, I'd love to do it for sure.
Got it. I'd love to have your help. And, already we're seeing dividends being paid. For example, if you are under the age of 17 in Chicago now, when these golf courses all reopen for the Park District, you're going to be playing your golf for free. And I don't mean on Tuesday afternoon after 5 o'clock or on Saturday at 9 o'clock at night. Basically, if you're 17 or under, you play free. And I think, the kids are the future of the game. And to make an investment like that, I think the city of Chicago's done a great thing. And you're going to start seeing these golf courses be absolutely jam-packed with kids. First Tee is really going to be involved down there. And it has kind of spurred an enthusiasm for the game that, frankly, was kind of missing the last couple of decades. These are 2 iconic golf courses in America's greatest golf town. It just makes too much sense.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it get going for sure. I want to shift a little bit now, and I want to talk a little bit about your biggest adversity you've ever faced, because I think it's great that these kids have a chance to go and do something that's bigger than some of the things that they may face in their community or at their home. So tell me the biggest adversity you've ever faced.
Well, the biggest adversity was definitely the cancer. It was a tough one. Most of my friends really didn't even know. Debbie Rolfing, I think, does, and a few people, the doctor certainly, but it was a pretty dire prognosis. It was a very, very rare cancer and very deadly. And my percentage of making it was very, very small. But somehow I was able to sort of muster up hope through it all. And I think that's a tribute to kind of the way I was brought up and kind of my life as it's unfolded. I had to always sort of have hope. My dad, like I said, died when I was very young at the age of 13. And I needed to have a lot of hope after that for the immediate time. And I think the whole key to me getting through the cancer thing was hope. Had to have the hope, because without the hope, I wouldn't have made it. There's no question about it. And as I go forward now with the messaging on cancer, and I deal with a lot of people all over the world on a regular basis, a day doesn't go by where I don't hear a story from somebody about cancer, or a question, or could I help? It's just all about hope, Robbie. And that's just life in general. There's always hope, even in the face of this pandemic, and people losing their jobs, in some cases, their homes and things like that. There's always hope. There is always hope.
Well, what I love about your projects, and I think it says a lot about how you're able to beat cancer, is that a lot of them are giving hope, whether it's in Hawaii, whether it's in Chicago, whether it's your connection with MD Anderson, where you spent time obviously going through your treatment. I think a lot of those things are meant for you now to pay it forward and give people that hope. So thanks for sharing that story. Obviously, it's very inspirational. I'll never forget coming and visiting you the first day you're out of the hospital. I know you're a dear friend. I didn't look too good
that day, did I?
You were hurting a little bit, that's for sure. But I just knew that you're going to be able to do it because you have a lot of people who are pulling for you, and in those relationships that you've built over the years. Tell me, let's take you back a little bit and go through, give me some advice that you would tell yourself, to your younger self.
Oh, to my younger self? That's a great question. I think you got a future in this. What advice would I give to myself as my younger self? I think I will go back to the listening. I was a great talker when I was younger, and I didn't do a lot of listening. And like I said, it took me a while to really understand, how important a quality it is for listening. It's the most underrated quality any human being can have. There are a lot of good talkers and very few good listeners. And I think if I could give myself some advice, particularly when I was a young, cocky teenager playing high school football and, strutting around, like I had 3 varsity letters and everything was great. And I could talk a pretty good game back then, but I wasn't a very good listener. And I think if I could give myself some advice, would be to have learned how to listen a little bit early on, particularly to my mom after my dad died.
To all the listeners, I want to say thank you to Mark Rolfing. He has been absolutely incredible to me as a mentor. He's been a dear friend. He's delivered a lot of hope, not only to my family, but others. Mark, thank you so much for doing what you do. And thanks so much for being who you are. And I appreciate you kicking it with me. And I'll always kick it with you no matter where you need me, or anytime, just call me and I'd love to do it. So thanks for kicking it with me.
Thank you, Robbie. You're a dear friend. And by the way, you are a great listener.